هذا كتاب أنزلناه مبارك فاتبعوه واتقوا لعلكم ترحمون.
We continue inshallah ta'ala with Surah Al-An'am and verse number 137. Verse number 137 from Surah Al-An'am. يقول الله عز وجل: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وكذلك زين لكثير من المشركين قتل أولادهم شركاؤهم ليردوهم وليلبسوا عليهم دينهم ولو شاء الله ما فعلوه فذرهم وما يفترون. وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث حجر لا يطعمها إلا من نشاء بزعمهم وأنعام حرمت ظهورها وأنعام لا يذكرون اسم الله عليها افتراء عليه سيجزيهم بما كانوا يفترون. وقالوا ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا ومحرم على أزواجنا وإن يكن ميتة فهم فيه شركاء سيجزيهم وصفهم إنه حكيم عليم. قد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم سفها بغير علم وحرموا ما رزقهم الله افتراء على الله قد ضلوا وما كانوا مهتدين. The transition of this ayat. And so many of the mushrikeen, their partners have made fair seeming the killing of their children in order to lead them to their own destruction and cause confusion in their religion. And if Allah had willed, they would not have done so. So leave them alone with their fabrication. And according to their pretending, they say that such and such cattle and crops are forbidden, and none should eat of them except those whom we allow. And they say there are cattle forbidden to be used for burden or any other work, and cattle on which at slaughtering the name of Allah is not pronounced, lying against Him, against Allah, He will recompense them for what they used to fabricate. And they say what is in the bellies of such and such cattle is for our males alone and forbidden to our females. But if it is born dead, then all have shares therein. He will punish them for their attribution of such false orders to Allah. Verily, He is all-wise, all-knower. Indeed, lost are they who have killed their children from folly without knowledge and have forbidden that which Allah has provided for them, inventing a lie against Allah. They have indeed gone astray and were not guided. So continuing with these verses that shows the tashri'at, the legislations, the rulings that the disbelievers, the mushrikeen at the time of the Prophet ﷺ invented and they attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how evil it is to have this al-qawl ala Allah bila ilm, to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge. And this is some of the details as continuing of what's mentioned in the previous verse. So here ayah number 137, وَكَذَلِكَ زَيَّنَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ قَتْلَ أَوْلَادِهِ. He says, وَمِنْ سَفَهِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Imam Sa'di rahimahullah, page 503, he says, وَمِنْ سَفَهِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ وَضَلَلِهِ, from the foolishness of the mushrikeen and their deviation, أَنَّهُ زَيَّنَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, that it's made fair seeming to many of the mushrikeen. And a tazyin, as we heard, is a tahseen. It become fair seeming to them, adorned for them. Not just that they would do it forcefully or thinking that it's okay. No, they enjoy this. And it shows how the human being can reach a level where one of the most evil of actions becomes the most beloved to them, and it's dear to them. So to be warned against trusting ourselves, because a person can lead himself astray, and also to make sure that the haqq, the truth, is not according to what people feel. So زَيَّنَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, to many of the mushrikeen. شُرَكَاؤُهُمْ, meaning أي رؤساؤهم وشياطينهم. وكذلك زين لكثير من المشركين قتل أولادهم شركاؤهم. شركاؤهم here, this is the فاعل. Who's the one that adorned the evil for them? شركاؤهم, their partners. رؤساؤهم, their leaders. شياطينهم, their شياطين. They adorned for them قتل أولادهم, to kill their own sons and daughters. And al-awlad, when it's mentioned, it refers to all of the offspring, males and females. So you can call a female from al-walad, not males, but it's meaning that it's been born. So قتل أولادهم. And that's what قتل أولادهم. They used to kill the females and not the males, but it's mentioned here أولادهم. قتل أولادهم وهو الوأد. They call it الوأد, وأد البنات. When she's buried alive or when she's, they kill her. وهو الوأد الذين يدفنون أولادهم. They would bury their children خشية الافتقار والإناث خشية العار. So including also sometimes the males خشية الافتقار. So if he says الأولاد والإناث in the same context, that means الأولاد is the males and the إناث are the females. So whether it's خشية الافتقار, out of the fear of الفقر, fear of poverty. So it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, they just would get rid of them out of the fear that would put burden on them financially. والإناث خشية العار, and they would kill their offsprings, their children, if they're females, out of the fear of al-ar, which is the shame. And this is something that, how can someone think that way? How their shuraka'uhum, they adorned the matter for them. They made them believe or think that having a female daughter, this is a shameful thing, something of disgrace that he wants to hide, as it's mentioned in other verses in the Quran, or to kill them or to get rid of them out of the fear of poverty, because this is now financial burden on them. He says, وَكُلُّ هَذَا مِنْ خِدَعِ الشَّيَاطِينَ. This is all from the khida', the tricks and the deception of the shayateen. الَّذِينَ يُرِيدُونَ أَنْ يُرْدُوهُمْ بِالْهَلَاكِ. لِيُرْدُوهُم. This is how the shayateen they do. لِيُرْدُوهُم, and لِيُرْدُوهُم, that means to destroy them. لِيُرْدُوهُم بِالْهَلَاكِ, to destroy them with destruction. وَيَلْبِسُوا عَلَيْهِمْ دِينَهُمْ. لِيُرْدُوهُمْ وَلِيَلْبِسُوا عَلَيْهِمْ, so to destroy them. And وَيَلْبِسُوا عَلَيْهِمْ دِينَهُم, to al-labs is when someone is confused, and the lips is the garment, so to cover the truth, to confuse the matter to them. And it's all related also, as it's mentioned in the previous verses, وَكَذَلِكَ زَيَّدْنَا لِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ عَمَلَهُم. This is how we adorned for every nation their actions. So a nation, their actions can be extremely evil, but it becomes something that is beautiful for them, where they're pleased with it. And again, this is a dangerous thing, and this is how whether it's their leaders, their shayateen, their devils, they would adorn these matters for them, for two reasons, as he mentioned here: for them to be destroyed because they disobey the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they end up being in the hellfire, and for them to their religion, or the religion of the truth, to be confusing for them. Because once a person, he adorns or he loves the evil, it's very difficult to get him away from it to see the truth, because now it's emotions, it's loving, it's been adorned for them. وَيَلْبِسُ عَلَيْهِمْ دِينَهُمْ فَيَفْعَلُونَ الْأَفْعَالَ الَّتِي فِي غَايَةِ الْقُبْحِ. As he says, if you're following that, so they will do أفعال, actions, التي في غاية القبح, which is in the al-ghaya, as we heard before, the end of things, the objective, the end of al-qubh, disgust and evil. Something that no one of decency can imagine that this is something they can do. And if you remember when we talked about this, when you read an ayah like this, and to the world today, what would they think about people that used to kill their children, kill their daughter when they're born? They would even bury her alive out of the fear of shame. How evil the action is, everybody would agree. To them, it wasn't like this. At their time, when they would look at this matter, they were kind people, they were generous, they would do all kinds of good things, they would give charity and all kinds of things, they have decency in their dealings. But this is how the shayateen and those who led them astray, they made this matter looks to be something beautiful in their life. They're pleased with it. It's not something evil whatsoever. And as one of the reasons, as mentioned, is that they're doing it as sacrifices. For them to be the daughters of Allah, wal-'iyadhu billah. This is how the false belief, to be the angels, right? So something can be extremely evil, but how the hearts can be so much corrupted that they would see that this is something that is okay or pleasing or whatever. This is how dangerous the human beings can be. This is how the hearts can be corrupted. So when people they leave the matter to themselves, as you see, this is all the verses is leading and giving this meaning. When it's left to the human beings, this is destruction. This is confusion. And they can reach the state of evil without knowing, or even without being seen how evil it is. Therefore, the haqq, the ultimate truth, is only by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't change. And this is the ultimate truth. So to continue with what is being said, he says, وَلَا يَزَالُ شُرَكَاؤُهُم يزينونها, and their shuraka, these partners, whether again رؤساؤهم شياطينهم, they kept on beautifying the matter for them. يزينونها, the alif, the damir refers to قتل أولادهم, they killing their children. لهم, to them, حتى تكون عندهم, and all of the evil actions, حتى تكون عندهم من الأمور الحسنة والخصال المستحسنة, till it becomes to them from the beautiful matters, الأمور الحسنة والخصال, characteristics, المستحسنة, that is looked upon as something good. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And the Iblis, he knows how the human beings they function, and also the evil, the shayateen of the human beings, they know also how things work. And the oppressed ones, they're the foolish ones. They don't know where they're being dragged to. From something that used to be considered the worst evil ever, after some time, it becomes something that is adorned to them. Kept on beautifying it for them and bringing things to convince them. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَمْنَعَهُمْ, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, He would have prevented them, subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَيَحُولَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَبَيْنَ هَذِهِ الْأَفْعَالِ, and to prevent al-yahul, that means becomes a barrier between them and these evil actions. وَيَمْنَعَ أَوْلَادَهُمْ عَنْ قَتْلِ الْأَبَوَيْنِ لَهُمْ, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, He could give the children, even when they're just born, the ability, the power to prevent the killing of their fathers to them. ما فعلوا, what they did. ولكن, but اقتضت حكمته, the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wisdom of Allah, اقتضت, becomes as a necessity. This is the wisdom of Allah. التخلية بينهم وبين أفعالهم. التخلية is when something is left. Purifying comes in the meaning sometimes of purification, to remove something. So التخلية بينهم, that means to prevent, or to remove the prevention between them and their actions, for them to have their will to be fulfilled, the evil will, because that's the whole test about this life. You know, if every evil Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevents it by the will of Allah, by the power of Allah, there's no test anymore in this life. There's no willingness whether to be obedient or to be evil. That's the entire amana that the human beings have been entrusted with, to wish to willingly worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ولكن اقتضت حكمته التخلية بينهم وبين أفعالهم استدراجا منه, for many reasons, wisdoms that we know and things that we do not know. One of which استدراجا منهم, because of the evil of their actions, is to make istidraj, to let them astray one step after the other. وإمهالا لهم, and al-imhal is to give them time. Maybe if for them to, the justice of Allah to be established upon them. They were given time to repent, to fix their evil situations. And some of the Sahaba, those who did that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them and they repented to Allah. وعدم مبالاتي وعدم استدراجا منه لهم وإمهالا لهم وعدم مبالاة بما هم عليه, and turning away from what they are upon, meaning because they are of no goodness in them. There's no goodness of them, so they deserve this. So it becomes a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unto them. ولهذا قال, and that's why he says, فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ, leave them and what they are يفترون, making lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أي دعهم مع كذبهم وافترائهم, and leave them alone, as we said before that the Prophet ﷺ did not leave them alone. That means he did not forbid the evil or give them da'wah. No, he continued to give them da'wah, but meaning with your heart. Do not make your heart in such a way, why this is keep on happening? Why they're still like this? فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. The same thing. Some people, they try so much to have sense of what the evil doers are doing. Don't make yourself tired in this. فَذَرْهُمْ, like, making sense of how evil person would be justifying his evil actions. Right? You give him da'wah, yes, you're enjoying good, you forbid evil, but to try to justify or to bring reason and to see to show how contradicting they are in their speech and actions. If it's in the context of da'wah to give call to others, mashallah, this is beautiful. But look at how if the hearts are sealed, then to be content with the fact that this is how life is. This is the test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to focus on what's important for you to do, which is again giving da'wah, enjoining good, forbidding evil, holding fast to the deen. So دعهم مع كذبهم وافترائهم ولا تحزن عليهم. Do not be in state of grief for them and why they're doing this and things like this. فإنهم لا يضروا الله شيئا, because they would never harm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the same thing is applied at all times, by the way, for someone to be so much stressed out over the world affairs or whatever. There is no focus on what is benefiting for the person and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He will, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ مَا فَعَلُوا. If your Lord will, they would never have done what they've done. So is it to be passive and not to do anything? Of course not. No one would ever say that. But it's all about the hearts of the believers supposed to be strong and not to be defeated and not to give up and all of these types of things. And to see how the Prophet ﷺ understood it and applied it. So وَكَذَلِكَ زَيَّنَ لِكَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ قَتْلَ أَوْلَادِهِمْ شُرَكَاؤُهُم. So as you see, شُرَكَاؤُهُم here is فاعل. لِيُرْدُوهُم وَلِيَلْبِسُوا عَلَيْهِمْ دِينَهُمْ وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا فَعَلُوهُ فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. So whether it's the shayateen, whether it's their leaders, all has been mentioned in the Tafseer. And the reason why they would kill their children, whether it's out of the fear of poverty or out of the fear of the shame. And you see how the tawheed of Allah, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا فَعَلُوا. That means even that evil actions, when it happens by the mashiyah of Allah, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, كَوْنًا. And if we have to understand it all the time, this issue of al-kawni versus al-shar'i makes it easy for the person to understand. Al-Mashi'a al-Kawniyya, the universal will of Allah. Because if someone does anything without the will of Allah, that means they are forcing or they are against the will of Allah. Of course not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above all and everything is under the power of Allah. But this is the Mashi'a al-Kawniyya, the universal will of Allah by the wisdom of Allah to fulfill the purpose of this life. Al-Mashi'a al-Shar'iyya, the religious Mashi'a, is that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for the believers to be obedient to Allah and His will for the disbelievers to stay away from their evil actions. So this is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the religious one, the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love for them to be upon from the shara' of Allah. So and also the فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ, that means Allah will judge. It's not going to be left like this. It's not going to be they would get away with these evil actions. This is also the meaning of فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. That even though you don't see the justice in your life, or you don't see it with regards to their evil actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-watcher and everything is by the power of Allah. And as the previous verses says, إِنَّمَا تُوعَدُونَ لَآتٍ. What you have been promised is coming. وَمَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُعْجِزِينَ. You can go anywhere. So they will face their destination and the effect of their evil actions. All of that to establish, again, as you see the verses, showing the evil practices of the evildoers and the mushrikeen and so on, for the believers to see how evil it is when someone make lies about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the same time establishing the tawheed of Allah even with these evil actions, and to see that everything is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the power of Allah, and for the hearts to be strong, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and not to be affected by these matters. So this is here in this ayah. And then he says وَمِنْ أَنْوَاعِ سَفَهَتِهِمْ, the next ayah, which is 138, وَمِنْ أَنْوَاعِ سَفَهَتِهِمْ, from the types of their safaha, their foolishness. And when the Quran mentioned these things in details, for the reciter of the Quran to have his heart clear upon this. And it's one of the miseries in this life when someone does not see the foolishness of the evildoers. When would people see them as people of intellect or people of reason, or they this or that? This is foolishness after foolishness, and a person is following them in their foolishness. So the Quran makes the person the matter clear to him. So وَمِنْ أَنْوَاعِ سَفَاهَتِهِمْ, from the different types of kinds of the safaha, أَنَّ الْأَنْعَامِ التي أحلها الله لهم. الأنعام, the cattle that Allah permitted for them, عموما, in general, to all of them. You know, the cattle, the animals that are permissible for a person to eat, it's for everybody, for everyone, to young and old, men, women, for everybody. وَجَعَلَهَا رِزْقًا وَرَحْمًا, and He made it provisions for them and a mercy from Him. He created the cattle for this, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why He's the one that gave the permission to what to eat from it and what not to eat, and to say Bismillah, to slaughter. All of that is by Allah, not human intervention, because this is all by Allah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it for them. يتمتعون بها, to enjoy. وينتفعون, and to benefit. قد اخترعوا فيها بدعا. This is the foolishness. اخترعوا, invented. فيها, with regards to these أنعام, بدعا, innovations. وأقوالا, and statements. من تلقاء أنفسهم, from their own selves. They cannot attribute it to وحي from Allah or a messenger of Allah. فعندهم اصطلاح في بعض الأنعام. They have اصطلاح. اصطلاح is definition, terminology. They redefine things. So they looked at the cattle, then they would make their own deen and religion and rulings based on their own selves. في بعض الأنعام, in some of the cattle, والحرث, and the tiles. أنهم يقولون فيها, they would say in it. وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث حجر. They said these أنعام, specific ones, and حرث, what they cultivate, حجر. حجر, al-hijr is when something is concised in a place or times, or a time, like Hijr Ismail, for example, it's a specific place. So حجر أي محرم. This context meaning that it's only for special people. So therefore it's al-hijr is barrier, حجرا محجورة. So that means it's muharram, it's a barrier, not permissible for certain individuals. أي محرم لا يطعمه إلا من نشاء. حجر لا يطعمها. No one is to eat from it, from الطعام, إلا من نشاء, except what we will, what we decide who to eat from it versus those who do not eat. أي لا يجوز أن يطعمه أحد إلا من أردنا. It is not permissible for anyone to taste from it, to eat from it, except what we will. أن يطعمه, that he would will to him to give him the food. أو وصفناه بوصف من عندنا, or we would give him characteristics from ourselves. These are the categories of people that would eat from this, and the rest they don't. وكل هذا بزعمهم. This is all from their own زعم, opinions, ways of things. الزعم is whether it can either refer towards the truth or falsehood. زعم فلان كذا, so and so he claimed. So it comes more into the meaning of claiming. زعم الذين كفروا أن لا يبعثوا. Disbelievers, they claim that they would not be resurrected, like this. وكل هذا بزعمهم لا مستند لهم. There is no مستند, there is nothing to rely upon. ولا حجة, no evidence, إلا أهويتهم, their desires وآراءهم الفاسدة, and their corrupted آراء and opinions. وقالوا هذه أنعام وحرث حجر لا يطعمها إلا من نشاء بزعمهم. This is بزعمهم, this is by their claims, there's nothing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وأنعام حرمت ظهورها. وأنعام, other أنعام حرمت ظهورها. He says وأنعام ليست محرمة من كل وجه. So other أنعام, other cattle are not forbidden from every aspect. بل يحرمون ظهورها. But they would forbid ظهورها. الظهر is the back. And what they mean by this is أي بالركوب والحمل عليها. So it's forbidden for anyone to ride on it. No one is permissible for him to ride on it or to carry their amti'a or their belongings on it. Camels, they would use it for traveling and they ride on it and they put their belongings on it, but specific ones, no, these ones, it is not permissible to ride on it. They make it haram. As it's also mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Al-Sa'iba, and so on. وَيَحْمُونَ ظَهْرَهَا. So they would protect the dhahr. The dhahr is the mount. وَيُسَمُّونَهَا الْحَامِ. ويسمونها الحام. ما جعل الله من بحيرة ولا سائبة ولا وصيلة ولا حام. This is what they call it. They would call it ham. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make ham. This is where the terminology that they used. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not legislate that for them. They are the ones that invented it. وأنعام لا يذكرون اسم الله عليها, and other أنعام. So أنعام حرمت ظهورها, they forbid the mount of the animals, the cattle. وأنعام لا يذكرون اسم الله عليها, and some cattle they don't mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on it. بل يذكرون اسم أصنامهم. They would, some أنعام, they would only mention the names of their idols. I mean, some an'am, some cattle, they would mention the name of Allah, as we mentioned in the previous verses yesterday. They would make some for Allah, some for their cattle, some mixed. All of that from their own evil legislation and rulings that is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَلْيَذْكُرُونَ اسْمَ أَصْنَامِهِمْ وَمَا كَانُوا يَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. And what they worship besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would mention these names on them. وَيَنْسِبُونَ تِلْكَ الْأَفْعَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. They would, even after all of this, they would attribute these actions to Allah. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them. وَهُمْ كَذَبَةٌ فُجَّارٌ فِي ذَلِكَ. They're liars, fujjar, wicked, evil people. When someone would say to the people, this is from Allah, when it's not. When they claim that this is the truth from Allah, and they're lying and it's not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. سَيَجِزِيهِمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْتَرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them the jaza, the recompense of how they, upon what they used to يَفْتَرُون, make lies about Allah. عَلَى اللَّهِ مِنْ إِحْلَالِ الشِّرْكِ. When they made the shirk, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. They made associating partners with Allah something pleasing to Allah, without any proof where they have any proof from it. وتحريم الحلال, and making the halal haram من الأكل والمنافع. So therefore also, يعني shaitan doesn't leave anyone. So then even in the categories of that doesn't take the person outside the fold of Islam. When people would attribute something to the deen. We talked yesterday about that التوسل المحرم, right? When people goes to the grave and they think that this is the good thing, and they would ask the dead, right? And they would say that this is, or they attribute this, that this is part of the deen of Islam, right? All are the ways of shaitan. Why are we sure that this is from the ways of shaitan? Because قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Bring your evidences if you are truthful. And there's no evidence, it's all twisting meanings of general wordings and so on. Where the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, upon this, they go like this, how they are when they sit next to the graves and they make dhikr and they make dua, and where the Prophet ﷺ did that, where the tabi'een, or fabricated or weak narrations or incidental situations that can be understood in many different ways. So again, this is just to remember that the principle that is behind this, that the disbelievers, the people of Quraysh and the like of them, they did this and they attributed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the matter was adorned to them. All of that because it's not from Allah. Not because it doesn't make sense only. Not because it's evil actions. All of that, people can debate with each other. That's why the evil can be adorned. But what makes everything clear, is it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or it's not, or not. And they lied when they said and they attributed to Allah. So the criteria then after the final message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it has to be from the wahy, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So, and then after that, the next ayah, وَمِنْ أَرَائِهِمُ السَّخِيفَةِ, from their foolish opinions, or doesn't make sense whatsoever, أنهم يجعلون بعض الأنعام ويعينونها محرما ما في بطنها على الإناث دون الذكور. So this is the next ayah. وقالوا ما في بطون هذه الأنعام. What's in the butun, what's in the bellies of these cattle, خالصة لذكورنا. It's only خالصة, like purely, only for the males among them. ومحرم على أزواجنا, and it's haram on our أزواج. So he says ويعينونها, not even the cattle but what's inside of it. محرما ما في بطنها على الإناث دون الذكور. It's haram, they make it haram and they attribute this to Allah. Haram on the females, halal for the males. فيقولون ما في بطون هذه الأنعام خالصة لذكورنا, أي حلال لهم لا يشاركهم فيها النساء. Only for the men. Women are not allowed to eat from this. ومحرم على أزواجنا, and it's haram on our spouses. أي نسائنا, the females. هذا إذا ولد حيا. But you have to be careful when you put a law to make it look like it's something, you have to be more specific and making all kinds of conditions. This is only if he is born alive. If the animal is born alive, that means it's only for the males and not for the females. وإن يكن ما في بطنها يولد ميتا, if it comes out dead, فهم فيه شركاء, they eat the ميتة, they eat the dead. So now it's for everybody, for males and females. But if it's born alive, the child is, or the animal child is born alive, then it's only for the males, not for the females. Female is haram. If it's born dead, then they are shuraka, they are partners. That means for everybody. أي فهو حلال للذكور والإناث. So where they come up with this, all fabricated, and it's all from their own innovations. سيجزيهم وصفه. Again, it's repeated. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala سيجزيهم. He will make them, give them the recompense and the punishment. Their wasf. The wasf here is that they attribute it to Allah. They made the evil action by itself is evil, and they will be recompensed as a result of this evil action, forbidding on some individuals what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permitted for them, and to attribute this to Allah. Both evil actions. سيجزيهم وصفهم حيث وصفوا ما أحله الله بأنه حرام, when they describe what Allah permitted as haram, ووصفوا الحرام بالحلال, and they give the attribute of the haram to be halal. فناقضوا شرع الله, they opposed, negated the shara of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وخالفوا, and opposed it, ونسبوا ذلك إلى الله, and they attributed that to Allah. And this is always the case. Whoever opposes the shara of Allah, he's not going to come out clearly that he's opposing the shara of Allah. He would oppose the shara of Allah and he would attribute that to Allah. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you, by opposing the shara of Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala سيجزيهم وصفهم. And also فخلى بينهم وبين أفعالهم, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would let them to do these types of things as a test for everyone, even in the level of bid'ah innovations and so on, for us to learn. And that is for whether a person would hold fast to the wahy from Allah or follow what is liking, what a person likes, and what seems like this, and so on. سيجزيهم وصفهم إنه حكيم عليم. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise, the unknower subhanahu wa ta'ala. حيث أمهل إنه حكيم. حيث أمهل لهم, when he gave them the time, الإمهال, they're not punished immediately. ومكنهم, they get well established in what they legislated and what they commanded. مما هم فيه من الضلال, which with whatever they are upon of ضلال. عليم, he is the unknower, بهم, knowing them. لا تخفى عليه خافية, no خافية, no hidden thing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وهو تعالى يعلم بهم وبما قالوا عليه. He knows them, what they're doing and what they say about Allah. وافتروه, what they forged and lied. وهو يعافيهم, and he's given them عافية. And he's the most wise, the unknower. He still provide for them, give them health. The more they do the evil, the more he gives them power, give them more money, give them more ability to do the evil. ويرزقهم, and he will provide for them. جل جلال. He is the above all, the most exalted subhanahu wa ta'ala. أفعال, the actions of Allah, not like the af'al of the human being. ليس كمثله شيء. Nothing is the like of Allah. So his af'al, his actions, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not going to come as what you expect, or what you like, or what you suggest as a human being. No, the matter is beyond what you even would ever think. But it's based on the perfect wisdom of Allah, whether you know or you don't know, His knowledge, His forbearance, His mercy, the names and attributes of Allah. So to have these also, the combinations together, إِنَّهُ حَكِيمٌ عَلِيمٌ, that He's the all-wise subhanahu wa ta'ala, the all-knower. So what is the effect of that in the hearts of the believers? Is again to witness the wisdom of Allah, the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be obedient to Allah and to be steadfast upon the deen of Allah. The last ayah here in this context, قَدْ خَسِرَ الَّذِينَ قَتَلُوا أَوْلَادَهُمْ سَفَهًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ, ayah number 140, bringing back the subject of killing their children. ثُمَّ بَيَّنَ خُسْرَانَهُمْ وَسَفَاهَةَ عُقُولِهِمْ. Then now the ayah shows their khusran, their loss, and the foolishness of their minds. فقال قد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم. They are in loss, those who killed their children. سفها بغير علم, سفها, foolishness, بغير علم, without knowledge. أي خسروا دينهم, they lost their religion. by committing this evil crime. وأولادهم, and they lost their children. And every human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in their hearts the love to their children. So how can someone, when you struggle with matters of deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be away from riba, for example, interest, right? But you love money, so you struggle with yourself, but it's a halal struggle, it's a good struggle, you have rewards for it. So you're not in loss. The evil ones might make you think that you are in loss, but you're not. But when someone struggles against something that he loves, and it's nothing whatsoever, loss of his religion and loss in his whatever he loved. The same thing with the children. Everyone loves their children. So the struggle is, do not make them make you disobey Allah. You be tested with your children. Are you going to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of your children, because of the love of your children? You should stay away from that. Is it easy? No, of course not. It's not easy, because you have the love of your children, but the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is more. So you would hold fast to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that mujahada is worth it. But you see how the evil doers, when the evil is adorned for them, they did something against their instinct desire for what's adorned for them as a religious matter. But then they were in loss at the end. خسروا دينهم وأولادهم وعقولهم, and even their minds. وصار وصفهم بعد العقول الرزينة السفه المردي والضلال. After they have been maybe given the description of people that have عقول رزينة, wise reasoning and intellect. Razan is when someone is not foolish, not jumping all over the place, settled. Then they are given then the attribute of a safa, foolishness, al-murdi, the one that would make them fall into the evil and الضلال. وحرموا, so قد خسر الذين قتلوا أولادهم سفها بغير علم وحرموا ما رزقهم الله, and they forbade what Allah provided for them, as it's mentioned. So the previous verses talks about these two things. أي ما جعله رحمة لهم, what Allah made it mercy for them. وساقه رزقا لهم, and He brought it easy for them to be provisions for them. فردوا كرامة ربهم, they rejected the generosity of their Lord. ولم يكتفوا بذلك, and they were not satisfied by this only. بل وصفوها بأنها حرام, but they even attributed to it that it's haram, forbidden, that Allah forbade it. وهي من أحل الحلال, and it's from the best, from the most halal of the halal. All of that because of their evil actions. وحرموا ما رزقهم الله افتراء على الله. افتراء, this is الافتراء is to forge lie, to make lie على الله, upon Allah. أي كذب يكذب به كل معاند كفار. Lying that he because of their stubbornness. افتراء على الله. قد ضلوا وما كانوا مهتدين, they are indeed ضلوا, that means they are deviated. وما كانوا مهتدين, and they were never guided because of these evil actions. أي قد ضلوا ضلالا بعيدا, their ضلال is far in being disbelievers. ولم يكونوا مهتدين في شيء من أمورهم, and they were never guided in any of their affairs because they left it to themselves. And therefore, if it's left to themselves, the shaitan is also part of themselves. People think that shaitan is, or to the disbelievers, shaitan, أم ترى أن أرسلنا الشياطين على الكافرين تؤزهم أزا. Don't you see that we send the shayateen on the kafirin, تؤزهم, push them? They think it's themselves, yes, their evil self, and the shayateen are doing the evil for them. So misguidance after misguidance. So this is what the end of what he mentioned here. So when we go back again to see the verses, how again the details is meant here for people to see and to witness the foolishness of the ways of the disbelievers when they leave the matter to themselves, killing their children, how their shuraka, as Suddi he said, أمرتهم الشياطين أن يقتلوا البنات. Shayateen, they commanded them to kill their daughters so that they would destroy them. As the ayat, وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. If someone is given the news that he has a female, his face becomes so much darkened and out of the fear of shame. Should he keep it with humiliation, or he should bury her alive, and things like this. And to remember, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا فَعَلُوا, that all of that happened by the Mashiach of Allah. Also, the ayah وَقَالُوا هَذِي أَنْعَامٌ وَحَرْثٌ حِجْرٌ لَا يَطْعَمُهَا, there's details in that from the statements of the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, explaining in details how they did, and this is sufficient what we have here in the Quran. and they gave these names as it's mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah, making this haram from specific matters, and this is al-bahira wal-sa'iba wal-ham as it's mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah. And if someone says, what is the bahira wal-sa'iba? Yes, each one has its own specific rulings from them. So al-bahira is the one they don't ride on. Al-sa'iba is they leave it without no one to touch it or to stop it from anything, or things like this. All of that is iftira'an ala Allah. They made this all lies and they attribute it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the evil within our own selves, and to give us this al-ittiba' and to follow the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and never to judge matters according to one's feelings and judgments and all of these things, but rather al-mizan, the balance is al-wahy, al-Quran wa sunnah. This is the mizan, al-Quran wa sunnah, and according to how it was applied and understood and implemented at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and never to be foolish to think that human beings are so smart to figure things out. When the wahy comes in, what's halal, what's haram, what's this and that, wal'iyadu billah, don't try a person as if he's outsmarting the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows best what's for him. Someone asked, he's saving money to buy a house. Does this money has zakah or not? Of course it has zakah. If it reaches the nisab and the year passes and the money you still have it, or you're saving money to get married or whatever there is, you're trying to be protective for your money more than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from you. Of course, if it's a question, mashallah, a person asking a question to know. But if a person thinks, but I need the money. No, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to give a portion of it for zakah, He's the one that provided for you, and He's the one that is ordering you to give zakah from it. So don't think that you know what is best for you, or that you can save your money for yourself and you know what's better. And the matter also with the haram and things like this. It's all reasoning and thinking and circumstances and all of this. With ilm, with knowledge, a person would see that if this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants, then this is what needs to be followed. Otherwise, it doesn't stop in one place. It keeps on degrading the person till it reaches, as we heard, the most evil actions will be justified, and people would think that makes sense, and all kinds of things of that nature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make easy, inshallah. We'll stop here, inshallah. And the attendance code is فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. فَذَرْهُمْ وَمَا يَفْتَرُونَ. Whether it's like this in Arabic, also leave them and what they invent. Continue, inshallah ta'ala, next time. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا بحمدك، أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.